You're listening to The Bible Guys, a podcast where a couple of friends talk about the Bible in fun and practical ways.
Hey everybody, welcome to another exciting episode of The Bible Guys.
Man, today we're going to be in Ezra chapter 3. And this is where the comeback begins.
Yes, the altar is going to be rebuilt.
That's right. Well, I think this is amazing because the whole city's standing in ruins, but they don't build the walls first. They build the altar first.
Ooh, that's pretty good.
Pretty great.
Yeah, that's really good. We're going to start with that. But before we do, we have a segment because today is Friday. Yeah.
I was just sitting here going, I don't even know where you're going with this. I do know where you're going. It's time for everybody's favorite segment.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know about
everybody that listens to the Bible Guys more than just a week or two.
Yes.
This is their favorite segment.
That's
made Chris mad this week?
This week. Well, I have one, Jeff.
Okay.
And you know what makes me mad?
I'm shocked.
You know,
shocked. This is my shock face.
Yeah. That's what I always do. Uh-huh. Okay, you know what makes me mad? And actually, it really, truly gets me mad.
Okay.
Is Top Golf.
Really?
Yes.
You don't like Top Golf?
I love Top Golf.
Oh, okay. But Top Golf makes you mad?
Very much so.
Okay.
And you know why?
No.
Because they impose upon everybody short rubber tees. Mm-hmm. And they don't give you an option to go tall. Mm-hmm. Right? Even though that much of the golf community, and the reason why I know it's much is because it made me mad so much. We took how many people there? 50?
Yeah, 50 or 60.
With our staff?
Yeah.
I walked around and asked everybody about if they golf regularly and whether or not they hate the rubber tees. And I would say at least half of just our group said they can't stand these short rubber tees because there's different swings in golf. And so some do tee it up very, very low. And to be honest, they have the better swings, right? So they get down low and they lift it and everything else. And you know, some people can go to Top Golf and crank it over the net even, right?
Well, that's why they lowered them. You know that, right? They used to be taller and then they lowered them.
Okay, well then I even hate it more then.
Yeah, because people are putting them over.
Then build a taller net.
Well, how tall?
Oh, dude, all I'm saying is...
Anyways.
This
is your rage, not mine.
This is my rage. Mm-hmm. Because I can't, to be honest, I can't hit. My swing just won't allow it. And so, the net is only, 250 yards away?
You can't adjust?
No,
cannot adjust.
I cannot adjust. And so Chad says to the whole staff, when Chris hits a ball, he swings out of his shoes, and he tells everybody, right? Because I can hit a drive 300 yards if I hit on a good swing. Mm-hmm. And
so you have hit a ball 300 yards.
Oh, sure. Oh my God.
That'd be
dozens and dozens of times, right? Yeah. So I could do that. But the Top Golf, the net is only like 200 and something yards away, and I can't hit it on a fly because my swing won't allow it. Because I can't do it. And so I'm just thinking to myself, gee whiz, can't you just have, it's not going to be hard, but according to you, they lowered it on purpose.
Do you think some people hit that back netting? Oh,
I saw Connor Mead do it.
Yeah? Yeah,
Connor Mead literally put it on there.
Did you see anybody do it 14 times?
No, but I'm sure Connor could do it. Oh, you did it? Because you swing low, apparently.
Yeah.
You have a low swing?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not a good golfer. I'm not, but I can crush that ball.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we played, I forgot, like 6 games.
Yeah.
And I hit the back net in the air.
On a fly?
On the fly.
Oh, wow, 14 times?
I hit the back net 20-something times. That's the only way I was getting any points, because I don't have any accuracy. I can't actually hit any of those circles out there.
Right.
So I just got to crush it, try to get it that way. And so I hit the back net 20-something times, but I hopped it. Towards the end, I was starting to run out of gas.
Yeah.
But at the beginning, my first 3 rounds, I hit the net like every other swing.
That's fun. Yeah. Well, my swing will not allow it because I tee it up so high, so I can't use any other golf tees besides the extra long ones. So what
if you moved your grip further back on the club?
Listen.
What if you used a longer club?
You can try that game all day long, but that's a whole different ball game, right? Okay. Mm-hmm. That's a whole different game to say change your swing.
Yeah.
Right. Change your swing is definitely an option, but currently,
so it makes you mad.
Dude, it outrages me.
Yeah. Furious. Are you ever going to go back?
I love golf. Oh yeah, I'll go back all the time because it's amazing. But I wish that I somehow was able to lift it up by probably double
So have you ever seen the guy who brings that little thing that sits inside of it on YouTube?
No.
He has a little extender, and they'll come and take it from him, but while he's got it and he's putting it over the fence.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
You ever seen that?
Uh-uh.
Yeah, he's got a little thing that sits inside the rubber thing.
I would love that.
Yeah. Well, the problem is if he accidentally hits it, he knocks it way out on the thing too.
Right.
Right. That's the problem.
Yeah. Well, I could probably, I don't know. That's a pretty good height.
Uh-huh.
Could I hit it over the net with the right tee?
With an extension?
It's pretty high. Maybe.
So that's a mat. You could just lift the mat out, pull that out, stick your own in.
What, you mean like an actual tee? But
just get a rubber one like that. That's tall.
Yeah. Well, I don't have that much intentionality behind for golf.
Yeah.
You know.
Anyways, talking about having intentionality.
Ooh, yeah.
Ezra had some intentionality.
He was intentional about
writing about Zerubbabel's intentionality.
Wow.
Of taking the people back to Jerusalem.
You know what? Actually, that started off as a good transition and then ended up being really, really bad.
Really horrible.
Yeah, that's really funny.
So we are in Ezra chapter 3.
Oh, that's so good.
Ezra chapter 3. And thank you for sharing your outrage on behalf of all of us.
I'm so mad.
Because it's never just for you.
I'm mad.
It's for all the other people who are mad about the fact they lowered the
It wasn't
tees.
just me. It was the other 30 people on our staff I was outraged for.
Yeah, just to be clear, I didn't care.
No, I didn't say I cared about you caring.
Yeah.
I cared about the other people.
Yeah, the other people are a bunch of whiners, too.
Wow. You just called half our staff whiners.
Well, yeah. Anyways, here's this. You're right.
funny.
Now I'm in trouble. I'm not going to be able to show my face in the office for a week.
There it is. There it is. An
People are gonna be
acknowledgement.
like, there he is.
There he is.
Yep. Okay. So in Ezra chapter 3, it says, in early autumn, when the Israelites had settled in their towns, all the people assembled. There you go.
Assembled, yeah.
In Jerusalem with a unified purpose. I like that. Then Jeshua, son of Jehozadak, joined his fellow priests, and Zerubbabel, son of Shealtiel, with his family in rebuilding the altar of the God of Israel. Okay, so Zerubbabel joined his family members in rebuilding the altar. Let's just, because I've stumbled through a lot of names there.
Yeah, I've always pronounced it Zerubbabel.
Okay.
So, but I guess it's just, long U or short
Zerubbabel.
U.
Zerubbabel.
Yeah, I like Zerubbabel better.
You say Zerubbabel, I say Zerubbabel.
Tomato. Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Anyways, it says they wanted to sacrifice burnt offerings on it, as instructed in the law of Moses, the man of God. Even though the people were afraid of the local residents, they rebuilt the altar at its old site. Then they began to sacrifice burnt offerings on the altar to the Lord each morning and evening. They celebrated the festival of shelters as prescribed in the law, sacrificing the number of burnt offerings specified for each day of the festival. They also offered the regular burnt offerings and the offerings required for the new moon celebrations and the annual festivals as prescribed by the Lord. The people also gave voluntary offerings to the Lord. 15 days before the festival of shelters began, the priests began to sacrifice burnt offerings to the Lord. This was even before they'd started to lay the foundation of the Lord's temple. Then the people hired masons and carpenters and bought cedar logs from the people of Tyre and Sidon, paying them with food, wine, and olive oil. The logs were brought down from the Lebanon mountains and floated along the coast of the Mediterranean Sea to Joppa, for King Cyrus had given permission for this. The construction of the temple of God began in mid-spring during the second year after they arrived in Jerusalem. The workforce was made up of everyone who had returned from exile, including Zerubbabel, son of Shealtiel, Jeshua, son of Jehozadak, and his fellow priests, and all the Levites. The Levites, who were 20 years old or older, were put in charge of rebuilding the Lord's temple. The workers at the temple of God were supervised by Jeshua with his sons and relatives, and Kadmiel and his sons, all descendants of Hodaviah. They were, how do you usually say that name?
I don't.
They were helped in this task by the Levites of the family of Henadad. When the builders completed the foundation of the Lord's temple, the priests put on their robes and took their places to blow their trumpets, and the Levites and descendants of Asaph clashed their cymbals to praise the Lord, just as King David had prescribed. With praise and thanks, they sang this song to the Lord. He is so good. His faithful love for Israel endures forever. Then all the people gave a great shout, praising the Lord because of the foundation of the Lord's temple had been laid. But many of the older priests, Levites, and other leaders who had seen the first temple wept aloud when they saw their new temple's foundation. The others, however, were shouting for joy. The joyful shouting and weeping mingled together in a loud noise that could be heard far in the distance.
Yeah.
They weren't holding anything back, were they?
No, they weren't. And first of all, let's go back to the beginning here, because I have some comments about the whole shouting. But
Do it.
But when it says the altar was rebuilt, I love how you noticed that even before they laid the foundation, even before they started building, even before they started doing anything, the first thing that they did was rebuilt the altar right where the old one was.
Right.
And which means that there had to have been older people, perhaps, that were there, right? Because it does say at the end, it says, but the older priests, Levites, and the other leaders who had seen the first temple wept aloud, right? Because they had saw the new temple's foundation, which means that there were people who remembered exactly how the old temple used to be, right?
Right.
And so, anyway, all that to say, I just think it's amazing that that's the very first thing that they did. And can you imagine just the joy of being able to celebrate the Festival of Shelters as prescribed in the law, on that space?
Right.
Just the absolute joy of being back there in Jerusalem would probably be something that you and I could, like a joy that we would probably never even be able to comprehend.
Right. Well, God doesn't promise to give favor to people who ignore him. Mm-hmm. So they had a lot of things they needed to do. But the last time they were in Jerusalem, they were pretty strong. They had held off the Egyptians. They'd held off the Assyrians, right? They were pretty strong, but they weren't making God their priority. They weren't giving him his rightful attention. They weren't worshiping him. And they lost even though they were strong. Now they're few and they're weak. The walls of their city are torn down. Mm-hmm. And the only hope they have is that God give them favor and protect them.
Right.
Right? And I'm going to say that's not a terrible place to be. Right. When you realize the only hope you have is God, that's a pretty good place. When you think you also have other things to help God out, I think you're kind of in danger there. But in this situation, and then it's the power of worship, right? The power of worship transforms them, certainly, puts their dependency on God, and God honors that. He respects that. And to the point that he names a whole bunch of people that aren't mentioned at any other time in the Bible. But God's like, hey, I'm going to give them special honorable mention, where here we are now 2,500 years later trying to sound out these guys' names. And while to us it feels a little weird, God gives honor to whom honor is due also. In this situation, these men, they led the people to worship God first, right? Yeah. And then I think that gets God's attention, is what I'm trying to say. God named them by name because they got God's attention. Right. There's nothing else special about them. It doesn't say that they were particularly rich. It doesn't say that they were super powerful. It just says that they grabbed their trumpets, they led the people, they began laying the foundation to build this temple, to build the altar. They didn't build the temple, just to build the altar so that the people could worship. And God goes, those people got my attention. You want to get the attention of God? It's not going to be in all the other performative things you do. It's going to be in your posture of worship. Yeah.
So the foundation that they laid, the new temple's foundation, was considerably smaller than the other one.
Yeah.
And so I wonder if, it doesn't say, but it says many of the older priests, Levites, and other leaders who'd seen the first temple wept aloud when they saw the new temple's foundation. The others, however, were shouting for joy. So it indicates that the weeping was not joy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I believe that's true.
Right, because otherwise, because it says the others, however. Right? Yeah. So it seems to be in contrast. Yeah. So the weeping could have been because it was smaller.
Well, they knew the glory. So Solomon's temple was, both temples had cedar from Lebanon, but Solomon's was covered in gold and silver and was so grand. And it was in the middle of this great jewel of a city, the great walls, the prosperity of Jerusalem, all that kind of stuff. And so these old guys remembered how great that was.
You know what?
And now they're looking at this new foundation. It's not even built yet, the temple. They're looking at this new place sitting among ruins.
Right.
And,
I was just going to say that.
The consequence of their sin is what brought them to that point.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing. I almost recant what I said. It wasn't because it was smaller, although it could have been.
Possibly. It's less. It's less than it was before.
It's less than. It could have been what you just said. It's just so sad. The story of the temple is so sad. Mm. The story of the people is so sad. The story of them having to learn the hard way is so sad. Right? All of the captivity, all of, the glory of what was versus what is no more. Right. It's just how did it come to this, that kind of thing. So so it's probably all of that.
But you have to remember that these guys are in their mid to late 80s.
Right.
That can remember that. Everybody else is thrilled.
Right.
Everybody else. Right.
Yep.
So we don't have to ruin everybody else's party.
Right.
This is the best that they know at the time, and they're doing the best they can to put God first and honor God. So I'm not saying boo on these old men, but that was a previous time, and now it's going to take some work. Jerusalem does get rebuilt, and it is pretty great eventually, but there's a lot of hard work because of our own choices. Mm-hmm. Now we have a ton of hard work, and it's not as glorious as it used to be, but we can rebuild this thing, and then eventually. Herod's temple is pretty phenomenal, but between here and there, it's several hundred years, and so they've got a lot of work to do.
So in 2000 and I don't know what it was, 2002, something like that. I was pretty connected to a guy that you may know, Louis Giglio. Mm-hmm. You know him?
Yeah.
Oh, so Louis had this thing called One Day, and it was in Bells, Texas. And what he did was he decided to build quite literally $1 million stage in the middle of a field somewhere on this guy's property in Bells, Texas. And his goal was 100,000 college students to drive down to Bells, Texas to have one big day of worship, and he called it One Day. He didn't quite hit the 100,000, but there were tens of thousands of people, right? And did I ever tell you he invited us on stage to pray?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so it's like I'm on stage and I'm seeing this ocean of college students. It was really cool. So anyway, here's what he did. He read from Ezra chapter 1. He read this passage, and it sticks out in my mind. And so he says
Ezra chapter 3.
Ezra chapter 3, But he says, all the people gave a great shout, praising the Lord, because the foundation of the temple of the Lord has been made. And he said, others wept, others were joyful. However, the joyful shout of weeping mingled together with a loud noise that could be heard great in the distance. So he said, wherever you're at in your life, he said, cry out to God, and we're going to make a big cry out to God. Ready, go. Now, you have never heard a shout like this. I'm telling you, it'll stick out in my mind probably until the day I die, unless I lose my marbles. Okay? I remember this moment. Everybody shouts, just forever. And they're so extreme, and they're so over the top. It just didn't end, right? It's almost like when you take a breath and you sort of overlap on the choir, and you're having to like stagger just because we want it to be one big loud thing. It went on for I bet you it was a 5-minute shout. 5 minutes. Can you even imagine? Tens of thousands of people. So anyway, at the end of this great story, he brought it to a conclusion and said that there are people in the audience, there are people in the crowd who they're absolutely in the worst place of their lives. And then there's people who are in the best place of their lives. And there's everybody in between. And all of our emotions toward God, all of our yearnings, all of our desires, he said, God knows every single one. Mm-hmm. And he said, the shouts of joy are mixed with the shouts of weeping. And he said, and the shout can be heard a great distance away. That was his big thing. He's like, let him hear us in the next field, that kind of thing. Yeah. And he says, but God looks down and sees every single story. And I'm telling you, what an impression it made on me.
Yeah.
It's a great picture, isn't it?
Yes. I think about it. The young men are cheering and celebrating.
Yeah.
The old men are grieving.
Yeah.
The old men are aware that it was their generation and their parents' generation that brought all this on them. Consequence.
Yeah.
The young men, they didn't experience that. All they knew was captivity. And now they're free to worship their God and rebuild. And so they see opportunity. Mm-hmm. And you can look back at what I don't see is the young men blaming the old men at all.
It certainly doesn't say that.
That's a thing that happens in our nation. We blame the previous generations, look at all the mistakes that were made, as opposed to say, hey, we're here now. What do we do from here on out? And they grabbed a hold of it. Abraham Lincoln said, I think it was Abraham Lincoln, I just read this quote. I was reading through a bunch of famous quotes from famous Americans.
Was it 7 years ago?
No, not that one. It was another one. I think it was Lincoln who said, we can complain that rose bushes have thorns, or we can rejoice that thorn bushes have roses. Right?
That's great.
And so these old men are grieving over their mistakes and the generation before them, their mistakes, and they're seeing it. And there's a repentance. I think this is going to be a tear in their eye, like Daniel's prayer tear in his eye, right? God, what we did is wrong. Only your mercy brings us back. That weeping can also be a mix of my own grief and my joy that the Lord extended mercy, right? It can be that. But the young men are not blaming the old men. The young men are celebrating, saying, look we're back. And they're together on this. And so we're going to build. It was 20 years old and older are put in charge, right? And so these guys see opportunity, and they're going to jump in. They're going to put their backs to the work. They're going to do the heavy lifting. They're going to put God first before they build their homes, before they build their city, before they do all those other things. And I just think and their song was, He is so good, and His faithful love for Israel endures forever. And it's those lyrics that cause both the young men to cheer and the old men to cry, right? Same words, and they're good words.
Yeah.
And so it's appropriate when we look at the rubble of our life, if that's where we're sitting right now, and go, I did this, but God is so good.
Right.
Right. And His faithful love endures forever. There's some work to do. I'm gonna do the work. If you're sitting where, for me and for you, we came from rough places.
Sure.
Our origins are pretty rough.
Yeah.
And we could have blamed them and stayed right there. You could have stayed in Youngstown and been that guy. Just blame your situation on the fact that you had a rough upbringing, or me with abuse. I could have decided to go down that same path and blame it. Or
I bet you I could throw a football over that mountain.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm telling you, if I can go back, we would have won state. Coach would just put me in.
Yeah, and just dreaming what could have been, as opposed to rising up and saying, "Okay, we're standing in some rubble. We've got some work to do."
That's right.
So the narcissist says, "Everybody did this to me."
Yeah.
And the opportunist goes, okay, look what we have to work with. Let's grab some of these rocks and start building an altar.
Yeah, for sure.
And so look around your life right now and grab some of those rocks and start building an altar. That's where the change begins.
Yeah, that's great. Mm-hmm. And by the way, that was Uncle Rico from Napoleon Dynamite.
Yes, it was.
For those of you who are wondering, what the heck was that?
Very theologically significant movie.
Hey, the gospel is clear in a lot of different movies.
Absolutely. I loved it. It's one of my favorites. It's ridiculous.
By the way, so John Ortberg writes a book, and he says that the pattern of every great movie, every best-selling movie, you heard about this?
Epic. The book Epic. We did a whole message series on that book.
He says every epic movie, the top 100, he goes, has the same pattern, which is it starts off by everything's right in the world, and then something tragic happens, something goes wrong, and then there either has to be a fight to be fought or a journey to be taken, and then somebody rescues the day, right? And then everything's right again, or justice has been served or something like this. Mm-hmm. And he goes, okay, so out of the top 100, not saying there aren't great movies that don't follow that pattern. He says, but out of the top 100 best grossing movies, guess how many follow that pattern? 100. All 100. Yeah. So off the top of your head, I'm going to do something. Ready? Off the top of your head, pick one of the best movies that you know. Gladiator. Everything's right in the world. He just wins the war at the beginning. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, what happens is the emperor's killed. He gets sold into slavery. That's the tragic thing. He has to fight his way back, and then he defeats the emperor at the end. Mm-hmm. Literally, exactly the pattern. Elf. Yep. Right? Everything's right in the world. He finds out that he's not an elf. A journey has to be taken through the Lincoln Tunnel. A battle has to be fought, and in the end, he saves Christmas.
Yes.
It's the same thing. It's the same pattern.
We love it.
And by the way, there's a reason why I'm saying that, is because John Eldredge would say that's the story of the gospel, right? In Genesis,
we long for it. That's why we keep telling that same story.
That's right. Mm-hmm. Because in Genesis chapter 1, everything's right in the world. And then something happens tragically. Sin enters into the world. Then a battle has to be fought. A journey has to be taken. That's Jesus. And then eventually everything is restored and it's right again. Right? So Jesus makes our sin right. He makes our relationship right with our Heavenly Father. And eventually the whole world will be made right again. Yeah. And so if the story of the gospel is buried deep down inside, even those people who are not Christians, even the people who are, they would call themselves atheists and of the Hollywood elite. And yet they even know that deep down inside, this is the story that people long for.
Oh, sure.
Right? And so it's amazing to me how the gospel
Homer wrote it
is found
in the Iliad, in the
That's right.
Right?
That's exactly
Odyssey.
right.
It's you go back even to the ancient writings. We've been telling those stories. Almost every one of Shakespeare's great plays. Same thing. So
Yes.
if you go back, it's the story of humanity. We keep telling that same story. The other big story we tell is the beloved is captured away by the dragon. The hero comes and sacrifices his life to get his beloved back. That's the other side of the gospel, right? That's the other story we tell.
Yes.
Those are the two stories we tell.
Yes. Yeah. And so it's so the gospel, God places, his longing down in the depths of, what's that verse? In the depths of every man. Or I'm just thinking a quote by C.S. Lewis, the God-shaped hole.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking.
Well, it's from Ecclesiastes that God has placed eternity in the hearts of men.
That's it. That's what I was thinking of. Yep. And God has placed eternity in the heart of every man. So anyway.
That book that you referenced for the movie type people that love this kind of stuff, John Eldridge wrote it. It's called Epic. It's a little tiny book. You can probably buy it on Amazon for probably $10.
Yeah. Well, I sort of feel justified in my movie knowledge now.
Yeah, there you go.
A little bit.
It's great.
Right? Because it's I find the gospel in a lot of those. Yeah. Okay, that's it. That's our time. So hopefully we'll see you on Monday on the Bible Guys.